Hi, I'm Bill Paris, an editor at Brooklyn Vegan, and you're listening to BV Interviews, which features conversations with some of our favorite musicians. This episode is a little different, though, as we're talking to three of the people behind new film Game. It's the first feature from Invada Films, the movie arm of Invada Records, the label co-founded by Geoff Barrow of Portishead and Beak. Barrow has scored many films and TV series over the last 15 years, including Ex Machina, Annihilation, and more, but this is his first foray as producer and co-writer. Helping him out are two old friends and collaborators, director John Minton, who has done live visuals and videos for Portishead over the years, and artist and actor Marc Bessant, who did the album cover for the second Portishead album, and more. Both Marc and John get story credit for Game, which is the thriller set against the early 90s rave scene in England. Marc plays David, an aging partier who crashes his car in rural England after a rave and is found by a poacher in the woods, played with menace and humor by Sleaford Mods frontman Jason Williamson. Things do not go as you might expect, and we'll just leave it at that. I talked to Geoff, John, and Marc about the film, the difficulties of making it with a very small budget, writing new 90s-sounding acid house songs for the soundtrack, and more. Plus, Geoff talks about his final tour with Beak, which wrapped up earlier this year, what's next for Invada, the future of Portishead, and lots more. Just so you know, we keep the first half of the conversation spoiler-free, but around the 34-minute mark, we do start talking about specifics from the film, so if you haven't seen Game yet, skip ahead to the 54-minute mark. With that said, here's my conversation with Geoff Barrow, John Minton, and Marc Bessant from the new film Game. I'm pleased to welcome three of the people behind the new film Game. Co-writer, producer, and composer Geoff Barrow, who also founded Invada Films, Invada Records, and groups Portishead and Beak. John Minton, who directed and co-wrote the film, and Marc Bessant, who stars as David and also co-wrote the film. Three of you guys, thanks for being on the show.
That's all right.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Geoff, I guess we'll start with how Invada Films came to be. You obviously have had the label Invada Records for a long time and have been professionally scoring films since, I don't know, Exit Through the Gift Shop was your first big one, right?
Yeah, it was just my first one, actually.
Right.
Just not the first big one, yeah.
And obviously, Invada releases a lot of soundtracks, so you've been in the film world for a long time. But what made you want to start making movies? And was Game the impetus for Invada Films, or was it the other way around?
Oh God, I think just knowing these guys for a very long time, and it felt like no kind of, we do, it's not like we want to be A24 or something, you know what I mean? But just like I think it was like now or never, really, maybe, with Marc and John, and Rob's like, a new person adding to that kind of pack of old white men. It just seemed like the next phase of trying to do something you're not supposed to do.
On that, were you like, I want to start a film company and we need to come up with an idea for the film, or did you already have Game as an idea and you're like, why don't we just do this ourselves?
Well, we'd always talked about different ideas, suppose, like over the years. And then what happened was that Marc and I started talking about doing a version of Concrete Island, a theatre version of Concrete Island, Ballard's book about a man trapped in a car or crashed in a car. And that never worked out for lots of kind of logistical reasons. So we started developing it as an idea. And then, it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, maybe even longer. Texted Marc, we started working on the idea, spoke to John about directing it and about the idea, spoke to Rob about about coming in as a professional writer. Rob Williams, this is. Just literally went from there. Have I got the money can we do it for that money? Can we do it without pitching it to anyone? Can we have complete control? And the answer of all that is yes. It's hard work, but yes. We were lucky. Invada Records had a good couple of years. I suppose my partner Reg said, can we have 150 grand? He kind of winced and basically said, yeah. And that's what we did.
150 grand, was that the budget for game?
Yeah, it's 100, so it's 200 total, but it's not much.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Because it is a beautifully shot film. Like it's just a gorgeous looking film, I think.
Thank you. That's down to John.
Well, it's down to our crew as well. It's down to all of us putting our resources and investing in it, basically. You know, that's we all knew the budget. We all knew the contract, if it was like between us, like the verbal agreement, which was, we're doing this. And, you know, I think quite early on, Geoff's vision for it was pushing the boundaries of what the story was as well. Because we initially, I think when we were writing, we had like 45 minutes. And then it was like, no, we're making a feature, let's push it. And we wrote more and knew that the story would need to be stretched. And I think all the crew that came on, everyone was committed. They're all, you know, majority of part of our network in Bristol, people that we've worked with and known for a long time. And then we brought more professionals in for the shoots that kind of helped us get over the line. And but in general, like my friend Ross, he's a lighting cameraman for broadcast in Bristol. I've known him for a long time. I brought him on mainly for personality reasons and you know, our chemistry is good and he'll be committed. He has the kids and we kind of developed that and a desire to try drama, you know, and to step into a DOP's shoes. So he then brought on people and, you know, and then we had some professionals, like our first AD was Kim Heron. She was a brilliant acquisition for us because she lived very locally and she'd delivered stuff. She knew how to help us make the day, and I built up a really good working relationship with her really quickly. And then at the end of our process, we had people like Jason, who is the colorist, who took what Ross had shot and really kind of stripped it back. Like he didn't really care how it was shot and what cameras or anything like that. And he's a real experienced hand, and he really helped us through. And you know, he's brought a lot to how it looks, and I think people are responding to that really well. And also we had Martin in the final mix. He's a very experienced chap that Jeff's worked with before. So we had some kind of like real adults and professionals working in the industry but in really key roles, and the rest of us are kind of just pushing it through and just investing in everything we knew, and was learning new stuff all the time.
But also we had been around indie records, indie video making, you know, like, and then obviously, you know, the commitment from real commitment from Marc, you know, like that, you know, that we're just knowing that Marc was that kind of person. Do you know what I mean? To really put his all into it, because without that, we wouldn't really have a film. You know what I mean?
No,
right.
That's on Marc.
Yeah,
that's all you're getting from me.
Over to you. Yeah.
a lot of the film is it could almost be a stage play in some ways. Marc, it's the David show for the first half of the film, it feels like. And we're not going to get into spoiler territory until a little bit later. So if you people, you can listen and we'll warn you ahead of time, because we will get into some stuff. You spend most of the film hanging upside down in a car. And I'm sure there were measures to make that as comfortable for you as possible, but it didn't look comfortable at all. How long was the shoot, and what was that like?
Well, just rewinding a little bit there, it does look like a stage shoot because that's basically its origin. And I think that was very much what we thought we could manage. And you're right, we couldn't do that on stage, which is why one of the reasons it became a film. However, in terms of the way we approached it, and certainly in the way we worked as a crew together, it felt very much more like theatre than it did a big budget feature. You know, everyone pitched in, did more than their respective roles, and made something happen. In terms of the length of shoot, I can't remember how many days in total was upside down, John. Maybe 5?
Yeah, 4 or 5. The first week we did nights, and that was the majority of Marc's stuff upside down in the car at night time. So I think he might have done 3 or 4 days, and then I should dig out the schedule because we get asked, but it's roughly the first week. and then Jason comes in for the second week.
Right.
But we also had some dog transition stuff. So Jason came in after the dog.
Yeah.
And so you spend more time, or that whole day with Jason, dialogue day, that was an extra day upside down in the car. So it's probably like 6-7 shooting days.
We hit that particular stuff with real, probably energy, well, definitely energy, and probably just the excitement of making a film.
Uh-huh.
So we got into that really quickly. I think we got a lot done early on. We did spend longer doing it in terms of sessions than we should have to begin with, but certainly by halfway through, we were much more efficient with camera and how much time was spent in the car, and John pretty much got what he needed, and then I was out.
Yeah, we made every day though. It's something me and Ross were proud of. We never dropped anything, never picked up anything, and in fact, we squeezed more in. We were working quick.
Were there any surprising challenges to working upside down that you didn't expect?
There was, for me, very, very simple ones, like trying to figure out the difference between you change gear with your left hand when you're the right way up. When you're upside down, everything's on the other way. So there was a certain bit of getting used to where the bits were in the car. That was quite an odd one.
We struggled with that, visualizing it, didn't we? When we about it, location scouting, and we literally we had a little model car that we took around. So when we flipped it upside down, we can determine which side the driver's door would be and where its location would be according to the tree and the position. And that was constantly challenging, really. It's like understanding the angle from where the floor is and understanding where the car will be and the angle it will be.
And just keeping an eye on Marc's brain there. It wasn't expanding and exploding in his head.
Yeah. The biggest challenge probably for me physically was the fact that you have all these ideas of what you can do upside down in a car that's made in 2020. But actually, if you go back to one that's made in the early 90s or late 80s, everything's so much smaller. I mean, hugely smaller.
Yeah, the actual car itself on it.
Yeah, just the physicality of being 6 foot in that little car was quite tricky at times. The pedals are there, my legs sort of curled up in there, and hadn't really thought about that because we couldn't practice that until we were in there doing it.
What kind of car was that?
It's a Volkswagen.
Golf. I thought it was a Volkswagen.
Yeah. Volkswagen Golf GTI 1988.
Pre-airbag, obviously, which
yeah.
It would be a much different film, with an airbag afterwards.
It would, yeah.
It really had to have winding windows. It had to fit a lot of criteria for the scripts, and that's what essentially the era chose itself because of so many reasons, but also because of the limitations on health and safety in the car, and the seatbelt, of course, that was also a factor.
Yeah.
Game sort of subverts and defies expectations you might have from a film like this, just knowing that it's set against sort of 90s rave culture, and it seems like a thriller, and you kind of dodge most of those things along the way. I feel, how were there do's and don'ts that you guys had in mind as far as making this film? You're fans of film for so many years, you've seen so many things. Are there things you didn't want to do and things that you did want to do with this film?
I think it's just explaining stuff too much. I mean, score was a massive one. Just didn't want from the very beginning, just didn't want any traditional score in it. It's more of a soundtrack, really. So, I mean, don't insult the audience by putting a tense score in it. He's upside down in a car in the woods. It's already tense. Do you know what I mean? But what else?
You were definitely always talking about not doing the normal thing when people are either drunk or on drugs in films, where they give you a camera perspective of their POV. Yeah. So you see the person who's got altered states, but you see it blurred or shaky or got a sort of weird like Holger vignette or it was, we tried to not do that too much because we just didn't think that was realistic,
And violence as well.
Yeah, violence. Yeah, I was just about to say, like, we had a lot of things we didn't want to do, and that created our set of rules almost, rather than stuff we did. But we did want to, you know, make the audience be with Marc in the car, to feel his pain, his, to be in there with him, and therefore not be too third person. And we wanted to be in close. It was just kind of, but they weren't really referencing too much other films directly or anything like that. It was much more just how we thought we wanted to deliver. And also, you know, so the sound design was something where we stripped it back and wanted it really naturalistic. And, you know, that creates its own tension. Like, you know, like Geoff said, no score. And then the only piece of music we knew we wanted before the edit was the rave tunes, the diegetic in the rave, and then some kind of set piece for the trip sequence. But beyond that, everything else was discovered in the edit, what the film needed. But we were quite faithful to our script, so we kind of knew our structure, and we just pushed it to the limit of trying to stay long on shots, don't cut away unnecessarily. You get to linger on the shots. That was our main kind of aim. You know, and
people had to fill time with Marc in the car, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were certainly more into creating a tone rather than a style.
How would you describe the tone of Game?
Well, it had to be obviously very claustrophobic, very tense, very patient and measured. It had to be, in terms of even just the palette, was very sort of green, very English.
Yeah.
It was a particular pace, which we knew for some people would struggle with, perhaps more so in the sort of filmmakers there are nowadays compared to the ones that we grew up with. But these were all things that turned us on from films, but not necessarily scenes from films, just the way certain films made us feel watching.
At what point did Jason Williams come into was he always sort of imagined as the poacher?
Well, as soon as the poacher character arrived on page, it was Jason. You know, for me, it was like, I knew Jason. I knew that he wanted to act. I worked with him, you know, like I've been friends with him, and just phoned him up and said, I don't think we even had a script then. We just had an idea, and I just said, are you up for doing this? And he said, yeah, I am. You know, I think he trusts us. He had worked with John on a video before.
Well, actually, not until we was into the film, weirdly.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah. We was already writing, and Jason was already on board.
Oh, right. Cool.
Then it kind of surreptitiously come around. But yeah, I always thought, oh, is this planned or not? You know, and that's I don't think it was at all. It's just our network and the way things work out. But
yeah,
it was handy because, you know, building relationship with someone from doing a couple of
that really helped. You know,
really helped because Jason, you know, I remember Geoff saying in our first call with the outline of the story, and Jason's going to play the poacher. It's like, yeah, so he was immediately. So when he was being written, the dialogue that Rob was writing was always Jason. But he's a pivotal role alongside Marc, but have least amount of input because he wasn't part of our writing team. So he was just delivered the script and then started doing some read-throughs, but we didn't do much. You know, we couldn't afford to. Everyone's got other things, you know, so he is the perfect person for the role.
There's a certain menace about him that is palpable, and like you feel it even before he takes off his balaclava or whatever that is. You know, in the first scene.
I mean, it's like all the characters in the film. We know all these people from our past life, you know, like our history, you know, from school, from you know, like living in little towns with like nutters, you know, with like proper loony dudes that kind of drank a lot of cider and kind of were poachers, and you know, so it wasn't a massive stretch. It didn't feel like we had to write about something we didn't know about, which for indie making is just really helps, because you kind of know how these people would react. Do you know what I mean? Because you've been threatened in a pub by them enough in the past.
Yeah, you know, there's some of my dad. I see my dad in Jason as well. Like, he's just absolute disdain for kind of anything modern in life, and you know, it's just that kind of like, you know, blinker tunnel world that you're in.
I think also it was coming up with a character, because we Geoff and I would talk about this character, and it had to be, I remember saying to Geoff, it had to be someone that you feel instinctually afraid of. That doesn't mean they're vicious or covered in, you know, in tattoos on their face. They're not monsters. And often those people, a bit like the way we handle violence in the film, the implication of it is far more frightening. And often the quiet people are the ones to watch out for. And so when Geoff suggested Jason, it was just a bit of a no-brainer, really, because he's a lovely, quiet man, but he has an energy and an air about him which we can capture on film.
Right.
But that was his decision making of how to play the poacher as well, wasn't it? Because he, you know, he's not going to come out and be Sleaford's on stage.
No.
You know, he's not spitting rhymes and kind of putting that energy out. That's his stage presence. And actually, he's very quiet and reserved in real life. And his way of, you know, he talked about speaking to poachers and knowing these people like us, and also just really considering how to play these kind of like quite considered, mild-mannered people.
Yeah, it's kind of, the character's found Zen as well in the forest, right? And so, you know, the kind of, you know, the potential monster in him pokes out a couple of times, you know, like a couple of things that he says, you know, I mean, not ultra violence, just his frustrations with life. And then he checks himself and goes back into silence, you know what I mean? And that really is someone who's had to work on themselves for a long time, you know, to deal with those issues, you know.
Right. But it's a bottling up, isn't it, as an avoidance. So he's gone to nature, like we assume he lives off grid, essentially, you know, dips into the local pub in the countryside. That's about it.
Never even once thought about taking drugs.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird in the UK, like little towns, you know, like there was drugs, but not in the way, was there really, Mark? There was like, people would do a bit of speed, you know what I mean? And like, but it was like more of a biker's, you know, drug, you know what I mean? Like it, and then obviously people smoke weed, but that was kind of hippies, really, you know what I mean? It was like, and then obviously this is kind of from commercialized drugs, you know, in the commercialized drug industry as it starts to grow in the UK in the late 80s, you know.
All right, let's talk about the music. As you said, Geoff, it's more of a soundtrack than it is a score, and that's like and you don't even really get it from inside the club. I think it's interesting, like most of it's from the parking lot, so you hear sort of muffled things. And I'm pretty sure I've read that you said that you were never really part of the rave scene back in the day. That wasn't your bag.
No.
So did you have to do more research than normal to like come up with these songs?
Well, I mean, we kind of lucked out. I mean, we all knew tunes like that because it was so much of our growing up. But there's a guy, Jamie, who's kind of called himself DJ Smudge, and we play football with him, old man's football with him on a Monday night. And I heard that he used to make kind of dance tunes. So I, you know, said to him, look, we're making this film. Can you make some rave bangers? And he was like really excited about the idea of it. And then in about 2 weeks, he kind of dropped about 5 tunes on us. And they were perfect, you know, and yeah, so it's been a great experience, you know, for him writing music again. And I listen to a lot of rave stuff. You have to be really careful. It's a very specific time because you wouldn't be playing like the hottest tunes of 93. These would be playing like the bangers of 1990. Do you know what I mean? Because it's slightly more rural. They're not kind of like the super hipster DJs, you know what I mean? And then it was just like breaking into breakbeat stuff rather than kind of, you know, it was like crossing over just before jungle hit. So I was totally aware of it. I mean, we're all aware of it because, you know, we would all know about it. But so you had to kind of get it right, really, you know. And the main thing for me was it had to sound real. Like when you go into that rave at the beginning, it's got to be distorted to hell, and it's got to have an MC just chatting over it, and when he goes outside, it's just distorted, and that's why you can't really hear the actress in it, you know, female actor, you know, when they have that conversation, you can't really hear her because you couldn't, you know, it's like so yeah. And then, like I said, we knew that there was going to be some kind of flashback scenes and stuff, and then it was actually, I mean, John actually put in some tracks, and Marc had as well. So some of it was kind of copying a little bit what they had brought forward as well. So it was a big collaboration really on a music terms. And Ben helped out on some stuff, and you know.
Yeah, and we were really reluctant. We didn't use temp music at all as a rule. You know, that was something that I really wanted to avoid with Geoff in mind. You know, I didn't want him to put him in a position where he's been through with other films where, you know, there's temp music versus
where they fall in love with that. And,
but it naturally it happened quite late, just for that dream sequence after the dog.
Yeah.
And I needed to cut it. So I edited all the stuff at the beginning without temp music because we knew there wouldn't be any apart from the rave stuff. So it would just cut in quite brutally. And it's pretty much stayed that way. But then I found I had a kind of YouTube kind of playlist of rave stuff from early 90s. So I just dropped something in that was most Geoff-like, I thought. And basically, that was my choice. Something that was more, it had some space echo on it, you know, and it kind of worked almost too well. And it was almost like we kind of entrapped ourselves. You know, I just dropped it in just to edit to prove something.
Was it Laurent?
It works, you know.
Was it Laurent Garnier?
Garnier, Acid's Loop or something like that?
Acid Temples. I spoke to Lauren about it, you know, because we were wanting to license it, and he didn't own the rights of it anymore. Some really horrible company did. So he was just like, just make your own version. So that's all he did.
What about you, Marc? Were you into the rave scene back in the day? Was that part of your world?
No, not really. I knew plenty of people who was. I mean, we all did really, and some people got into it heavier than others. But I was sort of certainly by '93, I was over all that stuff. But it was, you know, some people really lived for it, loved it, and still do it. And that's, you know, David is one of those characters,
right?
But I appreciate the good time people had, and I wish maybe it was something I'd got a bit more into to see what it was really like, but it just didn't.
Same here. I wish I'd done more of it, you know. It's like, and listening to the tunes now, I'm like, I appreciate them a lot more than I did at the time, you know.
Yeah, certainly throughout this whole process where I've been trying to find certain acid tracks from places, you just sort of think some of this is really good.
Yeah. It's great. It's so rough as well. It's like that brilliant, like dance music, you can just pull it off the shelf now. But back then it was like just like floppy disks and samplers, and you know, it's the same stuff I used on Dummy, but basically they were just making up tempo versions, you know. But yeah, we were mainly into hip hop, like basically me and Marc is kind of kids, you know what I mean? That was our thing, Public Enemy and that stuff, really.
I was much more of an indie kid, so I went to gigs more than raves, but you know, I think we drew a lot on our experiences touring and stuff and understanding backstage areas and sound systems and how it actually feels. So, you know, the era was something just to delve back into. And I know you guys like Geoff and Marc are really into what clothes and, you know, the Reeboks and, you know, just kind of nailing the period and not being kind of, you know, we're not afraid of being kind of making the mundane prominent. You know, in the sense, like we're not going to jazz it up like you see a lot of kind of TV dramas and films when they're going back to the rave era. It's much more kind of modern romantic vision.
Right.
Yeah, that's an important point.
You know,
John makes an important point there because even the rave scene in West London would have been very different to the rave scene in the Forest of Dean. You know, these are two different places in England.
The West Country,
And we only know one sort. We would have known that the sort of what would have grown out of sort of travellers' parties and free parties. And by '93, it was all getting a little bit more tickets and the rest of it. But there were different places all over the country, I guess, doing it. But we only had one real idea of it, apart from what we saw on the news, what was being tried to
close down. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, there was a lot of kind of rave culture that was represented to us, wasn't it, through in a negative way, people taking over kind of areas and leaving mess and all that, you know. So we kind of lived through that cultural experience of understanding, you know, what the government were doing and shutting down parties and bringing in the, you know, bills to change the law and all this kind of stuff. So
yeah, it was I mean, this is a bigger question, I'm sure, but basically it's a kind of the two main characters with the kind of the handing over, really. It was like two old England and New England. Do you know what I mean?
As an American, the whole rave scene pretty much passed me by. You know, it just never happened here the way it happened in England. And you just maybe see something on MTV about it, and you're like, "Whoa, that looks crazy," but then you didn't know anybody who did it. You know, like so it wasn't really until like '99 that they tried to make it happen over here, and even then, it didn't really happen.
Yeah, it was considered in the States. It was considered as like it was like soft electronica kind of came in. Really, it was like, you know, kind of Moby. Really, you know what I mean? And like that tough club scene. Really, obviously, you know, a lot of it started in Detroit. You know, so so it was there in Chicago. You know, and
warehouses and cities.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was just adopted, and then obviously ecstasy, the drug ecstasy, was so massive, you know, like so huge. It changed the UK forever. Ecstasy. It was like there's never been a drug like it, really, that's changed society as much as, you know, people stopped fighting at football matches because they were all doing ecstasy and they were loving each other.
At football matches.
At football matches, yeah. Where so it was brilliant. The kind of brilliant thing that there was so much violence in the 80s, you know, like with football over here, that basically they thought that they'd cracked it. The government had cracked it with all the violence because it was disappearing, and ultimately it was just those football fans taking ecstasy. So they never cracked it at all. It was just they were all off their heads and all loved up.
I should ask, you've been showing it around in the UK, like at these special like tours screenings where you've got Q&As. Are there any plans for America at all, or North America?
Yeah, we're just talking to people at the moment, really. We're just trying to, like, you know, the film's completely owned and funded by us, you know. So it's just finding the best way of doing that. There's some great, you know, indie distributors in the States, you know, that we're working with a great guy called Todd, who used to work at XYZ, who's helping us out, and Andy Stark, who's a producer in the UK. And they know each other, and they're just kind of, you know, sending it out, feeling what the vibe would be, you know. I think that it's one of those things. Yeah, I mean, if you thought about the budget, I think people would go, "Oh, that sounds too low." Do you know what I mean? Like, it's going to be like but when people actually see it, they go, "Oh, wow, that's pretty good." You know what I mean? So yeah, we're just discussing it at the moment, and whether we actually end up just releasing it ourselves. But yeah, we would love to come over, and, you know, there's a couple of festivals that we've pitched for, you know, Brooklyn and South by Southwest. But, you know, eventually, if that doesn't happen, we'll get on a boat and bring it over ourselves in our rucksack.
Okay. I was kind of hoping that you might show it when you were supposed to play Trenton Atticus's festival, and that ended up not happening. So that was kind of a bummer.
Yeah, there was a proper bummer. Yeah, I mean, you know, festivals are just so hard to put on, you know. So yeah, they gave it a go. Maybe it'll come back next year or whatever.
All right, I think it's time for spoiler territory. So if you haven't seen Game yet, consider yourself warned. Game has one scene in the film that will be very upsetting for a lot of people, and it's when David
Jason
gets
shits in the woods.
Yeah, that's true. That's one of the funniest scenes in the film. But it's when in the middle of the night, David gets attacked by the poacher's dog, and it's a tough situation. But he ends up killing the dog. How early on did that come into the script, and killing a dog is a tough thing to do in a film, and it was a tough situation for the character. Like he was fighting for his life in a lot of ways, and certainly thought he was, at least. Yeah, how soon did that come into the film that you knew you wanted to kill a dog?
It really early on, actually. Yeah. It had to be the thing that started everything else.
Yeah.
We needed an explosive moment. We all love dogs. Geoff in particular has got a number of dogs, and we knew that would be the thing that as human beings, we'd all go, whoa, that's the way he was killed was again a reflection of men having to use their own environments against whatever adversaries they might find. It was always the turning point, and it was always the point of which we knew people would talk about, because it's horrendous.
It also gave motivation for the poacher to really be upset, obviously, and have a issue with helping him. So it was kind of, I don't remember a time when the dog attack wasn't in it. I think you guys had that in from my first phone call.
Yeah, well, it was called Dog Film.
Dog, yeah.
So it was very much, one of the first ideas was that it was actually more of a horror, where it was a pack of dogs that had been trained by the government, basically. And it was a pack of dogs that have been trained by the government that have gone rogue and that live in this forest. And they're kind of like supernatural dogs, and it's just like, so he was fighting then. So he'd have to kill all of them, basically. But we just realized that that's way too much money.
That would have been easy, yeah. So, it was bad enough with one dog, and our dog was the most professional person on set. His CV was kind of like a second to none, and we had to put a lot of effort in to train it, to get it to, go for David, our character, through a car window, and we had to build up a real strong relationship with them, and our naivety of having done this for the first time kind of really was a real strength for us in the end, because those guys really enjoyed being on set and being treated the way we treated them, and actually enabled us to get more shots than we ever would have done if we had been kind of perhaps more experienced. So
yes, we had to build a frame and buy a car door, put it in it, and then John drove it up to their place so it could practice for a good amount of time,
Yeah, we were properly prepped in many ways, and in that sense,
Have you had any walkouts from that scene? You've seen the film a bunch of times.
Yeah,
with audiences, with audiences. I meant with
not at all.
Okay,
we were. Do you remember on the premiere with Steve, the host at Mayhem in Nottingham? He was like, the only complaints they've ever had in their film festival that's ran for 20 plus years was when a dog was killed. So he was a bit wary of something like what you've just said, Bill, but we haven't really been asked about it much as I would have thought. I think the way it's positioned in the film, it's a shock, it happens, and then the film goes somewhere else. So I think you're kind of like, it's a palate cleanser, like when you're having a meal, like you've just had something hot and now you've just wiped it and you're in and the film is off. So I think by the time you're at the end, it's obviously there, but it's not fresh in your mind. They haven't got a moment to get out, because it's like you're straight into a dream sequence and then Jason arrives.
I always think it's very interesting that what pushes human beings' buttons is you can see such distress from human beings, and we kind of just deal with it. And yet the animals come in and we're all very much like, we can't have this. It all of a sudden does something to us at a far deeper level than other human beings. In fact, there's a website, a friend of ours, Robbie, who's in a band called Benefit, sent me a link to a website called Does the Dog Die? And it's a list of films which dogs get killed. Of which we're on it.
Oh,
there you go. Yay! We've made a list.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the last third of the film, when David has basically dosed the poacher with a strange cocktail of who knows what. Maybe you guys know exactly what, and at the same time frees himself from the car finally. And you can't really call it a chase sequence, but
yes, you can.
You can. Okay. I feel like with the poacher on all those drugs, like the menace is sort of gone, and he's almost like he's just like, what's going on, you know? How much of what happens in that part of the film was on the page in the script, and that seems like that there's probably room for Jason and both of you to like improvise.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. It was part of the script, wasn't it? That was, a few lines, maybe a paragraph, and there was more, and we edited it out, I think, because there was a point early on in the script where they come in contact with one another and they roll, Jason has a swipe, and but we kind of didn't want ever, that's the kind of violent bit. We didn't want to go down that road of them ever touching. And so really it was much more improvised on the set. But I had a real plan for the chase. We almost treated it like a pitch and putt, like we're going to start from here and go to there, and then we're going to go move over there, and there's another view down there, and we kind of just went with it. And I knew it was kind of going to have a linear. I wanted them to degrade across that chase, like, so visually Jason becomes dirtier, so does Marc. It gets grimmer, but essentially we always knew we didn't have an exact order of stuff. We just shot a load of stuff, basically, as much as we could get done in 2 weeks. Improvised, like around the log. Do you remember the big log shot, which only appears for a couple of seconds in the film, but is actually been really important. It's become our press shot, and we've used it a lot in the promotion of the film because they're rarely in the same shot for too long, and actually without Marc being in the car.
Yeah, without giving too much away, it was just the shot that seemed to work with them both in it.
It was also the part of the film where the main character, which never speaks, which is the environment, which is the woods, had the chance to literally almost like have two wood lice, and it kept putting its hand in front of them, making them change directions. All of a sudden it was just in charge, and that's certainly that sense of being in a sort of woodland maze, And
also what was really important was for me always was the Falklands war scene. That was something that I kind of, I suppose pushed for a lot and organised and found a guy who was into reenactment and making sure that the prisoners had the right outfits on. And yeah, I mean, it's a very tiny little bit in it, but it means a lot to Jason's backstory, obviously. And it didn't need to be heard. It didn't, just the guy shouting and Marc walking off in the smoke and broke the chase up as well. So we could kick on again. And then musically, we tried stuff, but that as soon as we found that was kind of like, that's the one. Because it also has a relationship with Jason's character. It's really, really a senior relationship that you won't get in the States, but basically there were two ice dancers, the English ice dancers that won the Olympics, called Torval and Dean in 1984.
Okay.
And they used that track as the dance. So the idea of two people dancing and the idea that it grows and grows and grows as a piece, and it starts off in a church, it was just too perfect, really. So yeah, and then I did a rave version of it, like added the rave sounds.
Right. It's Ravel's Bolero, right?
That's right. Yeah. But they were kind of heroes from that time in 1984, which would have been not that long after the Falklands War. So they were just it was really entrenched in British culture, that whole stuff, patriotism and success of the British Empire,
And certainly we'd had moments throughout the film of David's backstory, and it was a good moment to just do a light touch of various bits of our poacher's backstory. What stuff that was hardwired, embedded in his mind, which came to the fore because of
the drugs.
Exactly. It had to erupt out of him without, everything was against his will. And actually that chase sequence he was visually chasing David, but I think in his mind, he was just following someone. It was almost like his mind had been flipped. So David's trying to get away, and he's just kind of, where are you going? Following, and then
I mean, the thing is, a lot of kind of like low budget British kind of films, like they end up in violence, and that tense moment where Jason stood over Marc and like poach over David, and it's kind of like, is he gonna hit him? Is he gonna smash him? Is he gonna do this? and then that moment where basically the drugs kick in and he definitely needs a shit.
Yeah.
and that moment is kind of the pivotal moment where the film completely changes on its axis, you know.
I actually interviewed Jason earlier this week, and I asked him about how he played someone who was off their face, and he said his main contribution to it was just to sort of like bug his eyes out a little bit.
Yeah, it was a real challenge. You know, I don't remember really kind of giving him much direction. It was more about what's going to come out. Like, how's he going to just, in that instant, play it? And we hadn't planned for it. We didn't really rehearse. And we didn't really have much time to, whatever came out instinctively, we had to go with. And I think I remember at the time there was a bit of pressure from the crew about how this is going to happen, or maybe like I'd looked at using eye contacts and stuff to maybe dilate the pupils, or you know, kind of like, should we be bringing something to this? And in the end, we didn't bring anything. It was more just an instinctive approach. And I think I felt like any direction I might have given would just mess it up. We all do stuff instinctively. You know, that's how we work. You know, Geoff with his music, I make stuff quite organically. Marc's in his design, so it's all coming from within us. So we all had to trust each other, and it's the same for Jason. It's like Jason had it, like he decided how he played it, and we captured it. You know,
and also Marc's exhaustion, just like the idea that he's actually got out in it, Marc. You know, and now you've got to go. Like, and this fear of this bloke behind you, and like, I mean, fucking hell,
yeah. And it's all, we all have I guess a base level. It's all about reflections of oneself and others, and I'm sure we all have ideas of what people are like on certain things. And I have no idea how you are when you are drunk, or how you feel when you are drunk. But we all have our own ways, and I guess you have to find a little bit of that in all of it.
You know, I think he played it really well. That you feel the switch, don't you? You know, the very first moment you see him.
It felt legitimate and real and like funny, and not in like an overstated, like, you know, my God, the colors kind of way or anything.
Yeah,
you would have seen in other films where they would have done an effect there, or had something where they'd have rigged a camera to his chest so it made him look woozy. You know, all that stuff isn't true. You might walk past functioning users every day stood at a bus stop. You wouldn't know what's going on in their minds, you know?
Right. Yeah. So there was like the like shot of the trees where like the colors changed. That felt very sort of real to me, you know. But
yeah, that was the very last thing we did, wasn't it, Geoff? And I remember I did about 20 versions of that and sending them to Geoff in the way that we've been working, and he'd be like, no, too much. No, is anything changed in that one? No. And then suddenly it's like, you know,
do you know what it was? It was more about it actually demanded it. That shot actually was less about us wanting to do a trick thing there, than the film demanded it. It looked up as an edit, and it was in place. We'd cut it. We cut the film. We were there, and basically it just showed the tree, but it was just too plain. It was just like, it just didn't work. So it was like, we're going to have to do something here.
Yeah, interesting. There's a sound cue there as well, isn't there? There's actually mood cues rather than utilitarian use of music. There's something. There's need to make a sound there as well at that point.
Very much so. Yeah.
We could have gone to all those places with the trip sequence. You know, I've done a lot of visuals and music videos, and it wouldn't have been hard to push it to extremes. Our VFX guy was very excited to be working on the film. He had all kinds of ideas of doing stuff for the trip, and he never got his hands on it because, and I remember Geoff saying quite early on, it's like, you know, perhaps the trip sequence is absolutely normal and crystal clear, and everything else is a bit more messed up, you know, so it's almost like creating this space. But finally, for that shot that you're talking about, it was only when it's this very simple thing where the tree bark, the actual body of the tree is masked and stays normal, and it's the leaves and that change color. But it's embedded in some kind of reality, because it's like the seasons are going round in a circle, and then it goes beyond very slightly, and then you're out. So you kind of believe it, and it's amazing. People respond to that in shot quite more than I I imagine they would in many ways.
In a moment of very natural serendipity, we ended up doing that chase on the most beautiful sunny day with the most incredible light.
Yeah.
That we could never have organized after all the grot of the inside of that car.
Yeah.
It also we had this amazingly sharp, crystal clear sunlight.
We got very lucky with the weather through the whole thing, basically.
I also want to say I love the end of the film. The chase sort of ends in a way that you don't expect. And actually, Geoff, on your Instagram stories a few days ago, you posted like a montage of people getting hit by buses, and that that could have very well been what people were sort of expecting. And I was very glad that he walks out into like a parking lot of a garden center or something, and
yeah, I mean, we did talk about it. We did talk about that as an ending, that he actually ends up on a motorway. He comes out on a motorway and he gets hit by a lorry, and it was just like, nah, God, we can't do that.
Yeah.
So
it's more like how could we do that?
Yeah, we couldn't afford it anyway, and so the thing is that where we were initially going to shoot was actually a woods next to a garden centre. It's not the one that we used in the end, but basically we were there thinking, what is the most, because we talked about like a burger place at the side of a motorway. We talked about kind of a disused kind of warehouse, but ultimately, an English garden centre means so much more because it's homogenized nature. It's people, older people that just ignore other people. They don't want to see stuff other than themselves, middle-aged people. So it worked out incredibly well, really.
Yeah.
Also, it's just really nice for us all, including Rob. We all visited that location. It's our first location. And then we went for a cup of tea and a bacon sandwich in the garden centre and just imagined David walking in. And it was just like, this would be really good. And it helped us in so many ways. It was just.
But once you've got an end, you've got an end.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like a start, middle, and end. And you haven't got to worry about the other bits so much there.
Right.
It was just the perfect antithesis of everything you'd just seen.
Marc, your eating of that burger, like you could just tell like how tough that hamburger was, that like, but it was. You were like, it was like the greatest thing you'd ever eaten, but you were like, had to like rip it apart, like I noticed
very much the point. Yeah.
I've had one of those burgers before,
Yeah. So. It didn't taste great. And that kind of didn't matter. That suited the character perfectly. Exactly. He wasn't coming from a place of quality meats.
Exactly.
I just wanted to, I wanted to give the impression that those chips and and the ketchup were the finest gourmet food you could ever have tasted. As far as like talking about budgetary thing, we're going to wrap this up here soon. We've been talking for a while. There's a scene early in the film with a fox, and I'm watching it and I am flipping back and forth. It's like, is that a real fox or was that a CGI fox?
No, it's stock footage. But then the stock footage had to be graded. It was very much a daylight clip, so we had to grade it for night. And in the process of many masks and many ways of making it fit into our world, I think it almost does itself a favor because people don't quite know what it's kind of like it's momentarily there, but it was probably the hardest clip to make fit into the film. But it very much had to be nature observing the car and without showing it. And I just did loads of picture research and from a library that I had access to, and that was the one. So there was the whole purpose of that stuff is to just sort of show that David is just one of the animals now. He's just there, just like the rest of them.
Right.
And I think that fox does it from the view of how we look at foxes and the way I think it's even got prey in its mouth and that chooses to turn away from it. It's like it knows, it knows there's a fly in the ointment here. Right. And I'm going to go somewhere else.
Geoff, what's next for Invada Films? Is there a second feature lined up?
There's some ideas floating around. One, basically I wrote something with Rob some years back that we've always been working on. But that's like a lot more, more of a budget that we've been chatting to people about. There's one that I'm looking at doing, which is actually going to be shot in LA. And then, there's still an awful lot. We're working so hard on this still. You know what I mean? It's like, John's still editing the trailers, Mark's still doing the posters, I'm still trying to sell it. You know what I mean? It's like non-stop. So I don't think that we'll actually stop until the summer next year, when it comes down to doing this properly, if we want to try and get people to see it.
Geoff, you spent a good chunk of this year touring with Beak, the last one before you've now retired from the group. How did that go for you? And especially maybe like North America, how was that for you?
Oh, it was great. I mean, we always love coming back to the States. I mean, really, really, really always loved it. We would just have fun, like we'd get in a little van. Our mate Charlie, who lives in LA, like drives us about, and I mean, it was brilliant. We went up to Canada as well, and it was just a good vibe. I mean, knowing it was the last time I would do it, kind of like hurt the bones a bit. But I mean, got to move on. I've been getting ill. I'm just like with exhaustion. I'm not very good at touring anymore. So, and I told the other guys, Will and Bill, way before, it wasn't. I didn't drop it on them. So, I think they'll be back out next year with a new drummer, I imagine. So,
I was going to ask, have Billy and Will found a new singing drummer?
Yeah, they put the word out, and they got like 100 people. You know what I mean? Go for it. So there's definite some talent, but I think you've got to be a right kind of wanker to do it.
You can't replace Barrow.
Right. No, you can. Right. The drumming part and the singing part is easy. The grumpy part is just take some time.
Right. Speaking of Billy, like he is on the game soundtrack, like doing like some sort of a cappella folk song that's about the poacher. Where does that? I watched it twice and I can't figure out where that is in the film.
It was actually in the trailer.
Yeah.
It was actually in the trailer. So, but it's such a good tune. We got to have that on the soundtrack as well.
Okay. Speaking of Invada and movies that are centered around rave culture, somewhat, you all released the soundtrack for one of the most arresting, unforgettable films I've seen this year, Surat.
Yeah.
And the score is amazing.
It is amazing. Yeah. Yeah. I honestly, like, Reg called me, my partner, and said, look, there's a possibility we could do the score for Surat. I was like, what? I don't even know what that is. And it's like, it's an amazing film that Neon are going to do. And it's written by a dance music guy, not a techno electronic producer. I mean, honestly, I watched that film and it broke me in half. It's just a film. I mean, people talk about like, one battle after the other and all that stuff. They ain't got a touch on Surat.
Yeah, Surat's so powerful. I only watched it this week because I've just been going on about it. So
I've been bugging everyone. You've got to see this film. You have to see this film.
Yeah. It's a real visceral gut punch, especially about halfway through,
Oh man, on it, don't. Yeah. We need to do a double bill.
Yeah.
I'd love to do a double bill of that.
There are other connections that I won't mention, but between the films.
There is a few in there. Yeah.
There is. Oh my God. Yes, of course. Yeah.
It might be a little rough for some people. I don't one more than the other, but yeah. All right. Well, I've only got a couple more questions. It's end of the year, and you all seem like you're music people who maybe still listen to stuff. Do you have a favorite record from the year, from 2025?
For me, I'm going to be completely like promotion hill for Invada here. I'm going to say the Electronics album. I worked on it with Kevin, and I just thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it's amazing. So I'm going to go with Electronics, really.
Right. And you just released a Beak remix of one of the songs off of that this week. So
yeah, it's weird because people say, oh, you shouldn't really put something you've worked on, but I'm like, that's the reason I worked on it. It's because I love it so much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Well, it's got to be the only music I've listened to is Game. So the Game soundtrack is going to be
all right. Fair enough.
Apart from Game and Invada Records, like our world, we need to have a break and listen to something else in the world. Gazelle Twin or Game soundtrack. That'll be it.
Marc, what about you?
I don't know, actually. I listened to quite a lot, but I couldn't tell if it was this year or not half the time.
Okay, fair enough.
I really liked the Weapons soundtrack, actually. I really enjoyed the film Weapons, and I really liked the music to it.
Okay.
But on the whole, I don't really have any favorites.
Yeah.
All right. What about films?
I'm going to go Surat, about 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Of what I've seen this year, well, Surat was brought to me via Geoff. One Battle, I definitely saw that.
I definitely saw that.
I definitely saw it.
That's a review.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, how many films does one see in 1 year? I like the Dynamite, House of Dynamite, but I don't have an absolute favorite this year.
Okay.
It's been busy, man.
I saw the 50th anniversary of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and it was still fantastic and knocked everything else out of the water.
All right. Geoff, I know that you don't like to really talk about Portishead very much, so I'm going to ask your collaborators, John and Marc, will Portishead ever get back together?
But if you ask me, I'd say I hope so, because I need to take my kit out on the road again. So I'm biased. I doubt it.
Jeff's my best mate, and I want him to be happy. And if he's happy and not doing it, then that's fine by me.
Marc, John, Geoff, thanks so much for coming on the show today and talking about the film and other stuff. And good luck with the continued release of the game. You're just going to keep it theatrical for a while? No digital anytime in the near future?
Well, that's what we're talking to at the moment. It's like do that thing of kind of like sales agents and then digital distribution, and then or do we do it ourselves and just make it available on those things where you rent films? So there's lots of options. I mean, it's kind of pretty good for that now. So yeah, I mean, I imagine we will come to the States next year. And just try and get what we can. So if anyone out there can help, you know what I mean, they run a distribution company or whatever, then Invada Films on Instagram, get in contact. You know what I mean, if you want to watch it. You know, we're not that precious. Like, we're going to go through A24 and Neon. You know what I mean? It's like we're not. You know,
right? Yeah, we will get out there by whatever means.
We've done it before with records, you know what I mean? We've all had that experience of indie productions, whether it be musical film, you know. Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. And
thanks for having us. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah. Great start. And I look forward to whatever Invada Films does next.
Appreciate that. Thanks,
you.
Will.
Yeah. Take care. Thanks, man.
Thanks again to Geoff Barrow, John Minton, and Marc Bessant of the new film Game, which is out now in the UK and will be making its way to North America soon, so keep an eye out for that. The soundtrack, which is a lot of fun, is out now everywhere via Invada Records. Meanwhile, you should check out our other podcast, BV Weekly, where my coworkers Dave and Andrew discuss the week's hot button music news, the latest releases, and more. You can also follow Brooklyn Vegan on social media, and if you like this episode, be sure to like, subscribe, write a review, give us 5 stars, and tell your musically minded friends to listen. Big thanks to our mix engineer Nick Gray and Michael Silverstein for the theme music. I'm Bill Paris. Thanks for listening.